Alright, in this video I'm going to explain how to do a clutch pack replacement for this 2014 Triumph Daytona 675R, but really this will work for any bike that's got a clutch pack that you can replace, and that's got a cable connector down here in the bottom like this. So before I get into this, just a couple things I'm going to go over here at the start, sort of best practices and setup. My camera here. When you remove this clutch cover, I'll talk about the bolt sequence here in a second, or not really a sequence, where to find the bolts. This arm, it's got this spring attached to it, it's going to want to pop back, so it's a good idea to put something up against the frame here. I've got a couple layers of painter's tape to help protect your paint from getting whacked, because I didn't do that, and I actually did put a little bit of a gouge in there, which I had to use some touch-up paint on. The other thing you want to do here at the start, make sure you drain the oil out of the bike, which I've already done, and then once you do that, you're going to go around and you're going to remove several bolts that hold this clutch cover in place. So there's a bolt here, there's a copper bolt that goes there, there's a bolt right here my finger is, bolt, 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 one bolt back here that I've already removed, you can't really see, and then through this hole in the frame you're going to have to stick something to get the last bolt off that goes directly through. So I've got this just handle here that I can attach an 8mm socket head to, and I stick that through, and that's how I screw it. Note all of these bolts are 8mm. And then once you've done that, taken all these bolts off, you can remove this cover, but before you want to do that, you actually want to take this clutch cable off, which is not a big deal. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. So you want to kind of pull it forward or back, I guess it doesn't really matter. You want to get some tension so that you can pull this cable, move my camera, out. And see, now that I got that cable off, note that that spring actually rests up against the frame. If I don't have the paint there, I could potentially do some damage to it. Alright, now that I'm gloved up, I'm going to finish removing these bolts so we can take this cover off. Okay. When that last one's out, you're going to feel this thing give. Move her nice and slow and gentle. Set that there. Note the location of the gasket. If it's in one piece, it's probably good to reuse. My gasket was pretty new when I did this, so I'm just going to go ahead and reuse it. Might use a little gasket maker on here to get it to stick, and then put my cover back on. Everything looks pretty good as it is. So you take this off. I've already drained the oil. You're going to see probably some oil down here that may drip during the process, so you might want to have something underneath there to keep it from making too much of a mess on your floor. You've got these 3 bolts, which I believe are 10s. And I'm going to take now, ratchet, 10mm socket head on there, and I'm going to undo these getting close. Let's see if we can't just use the bit. Alright, screw that a little bit. And top. Those come out. Put them aside. Okay, this outer plate just pops right off. Keep track of this puller arm, this piece that sticks out of the clutch, because that can fall out. Can't fall out going this direction, but it will fall out going out the bottom. Okay, that leaves us then with these clutch plates. So you're going to note there's friction plates. And there are plates. This is the friction plate that's got all these little discs on it. And then there are these steel plates. And on this particular bike, they've got some special friction plates at the front of the cover as it's facing you, and a special steel plate, and then a special friction plate at the back. But everything else is going to be uniform. So what's special about these is they're just a little bit thinner. But I'm just going to remove all these, and I'm going to try to keep track of them, put them in order, so that when I put the new clutch pack in, I can just line everything else up. But in this case, because the plates are visually different, that's not as big of a deal. Clear some space. And these initial ones I can just kind of pull out by hand. And in between each of these friction plates is going to be this steel plate, so if I pull them out as a pack, you can't see it as well. But if you do it one at a time, it's friction plate, steel plate, friction plate, steel plate, and note that the friction plates get larger after these initial two. That. And at some point it gets pretty difficult to move with your fingers. You've got a couple options. One, so long as there is a steel plate, you can use a magnet on a stick, and it'll pull the steel plate and the friction plate. If there is not a steel plate in there, though, it's not going to pull anything, because these friction plates do not have any magnetizable magnetic metal in them. And I want to be careful, because as I get to the back, oh, I pulled it out. You get to the back here, there's going to be a couple special things. First off is this, what's called a judder spring. It's this concave number here. That's going to need to go back in. And you want, I'll double check this, I'm going to say it now, the face with the coming into the cave facing out away from the bike rather than in, I believe, but I'll double check that. We got our manual over here in a second. When you get to this last friction plate, this one's usually kind of a bugger to get out. You're just going to have to work it around with, I like to use a small flat-headed screwdriver. Just be careful, don't gouge anything up using too much pressure, trying to force it. These are actually in here pretty loose, so if you get it started and get it worked along, you can get it out pretty easy. Okay, that's the last special friction plate. So judder spring, as I said, faces out. If you want, it's kind of convex, or convex, concave, whatever. It's curved. You want it curved so that the edges that make it look like you're going into a cave are facing out. Once you've done that, you're going to install the new clutch plates, which I'll show in just a minute. Right now, I've got them soaking in oil, and you want to soak these new plates in oil for a bit before you install them into the bike. That's going to make installation easier, but it's also for the longevity and the function of the clutch. They're going to stick if there's not oil. So as far as I can tell, I think this is the case, the friction plates don't have a particular orientation they need to go in. So I'm just going to put these in here so that they fit, starting with this smaller diameter. No, diameter is the wrong word. Thinner ring, it's not as thick. Then the other friction plates, one of those goes in the back. I then take one of my steel plates, and these steel plates also have a little bit of an orientation to them in my case. One side is pretty flat for the bevels on these teeth, and the other side has a little bit of a bevel to it. I place it so that the flat side is facing out away from the bike. Okay, with that beveled side facing towards the bike. Then we're going to have a series of these thicker, as far as the plate edge is concerned, friction plates. Sandwiched between are these steel plates. Again, making sure that I've got the flat surface teeth facing out. Everything should slide in nice and easy. And one thing I haven't mentioned that I did already, that you should also do, is measure the clutch pack height, because there's generally a pretty small tolerance for how tall and how short they can be. Mine, when measured, was at a 43.11 millimeters. That's just a little high. It's 43 is the standard, and then it's plus on this particular bike 34 millimeters, and I think minus 66. So I'm a little high, which is fine. That's what you would expect for a brand new clutch pack anyway, because it's going to wear down and get shorter. Okay. We're down to our last 3 plates, and these are a little specialized. It's a specialized friction plate, which all that means is it's just a little thinner once again at the outer edge. Okay, I'm going to put that in there. And then what I'm going to do for this last one, a suggestion from an engine builder / mechanic that I know, was to take the clutch cover at this point. You can see some dripping oil there. That's okay. It's just the excess from the plates that we've had soaking. This clutch cover, this outer one, put the outer ring, the friction plate on, and then seat the specialized steel plate that I have here, because it's going to mate to those teeth in there, and then line everything else back up using those two already applied here. That makes that a little simpler to get those on. Alright, let's get her spun around here. Okay. And that lines everything up nicely. Okay. We've got our new plates in. We have the outer clutch cover on. We have our arm, made sure that was in there. So we're good to go there. This is going to move around a bit. That's fine. It should move a little bit. Springs. The Barnett kit also came nicely with some springs. I think they're a little firmer than the OEM springs. Orientation here doesn't matter. The springs either direction, so long as you get them in. Get these all lined up, kind of hand screw them in so nothing falls out. There's that and that. Okay. Screw these in by hand. Then I'm going to go to my extension piece with the 10mm again socket, and then we'll get these down. And I'll double check. I believe the torque value for these is 10 nanometers. That's what I said I was going to do. So I'm going to, once again, when I put this back in, don't screw in one side all the way. These need to go as a sequence, or in tandem, if you will. So screw down one a little bit, screw down the other. Once you get to the point where it's pretty difficult to do it with just the extension, I'm going to go back to the ratchet, get it down, get out my torque wrench, torque those to 10, and then we will put on the clutch cover we took off, making sure that our gasket's still in place and looks pretty clean. I'm going to clean up this gasket again. If it's got any oil on it, I'm going to wipe that up a little bit, get everything realigned, put our clutch cover back on, and then we'll pick up from there. So the cover has 2 locating pins here and here that line up with the cover. I'm going to go on the back side first, and I want this puller arm fully extended. It moves in and out a bit. Fully extend it. Line your cover up. What I want to do once I get this here is rotate this arm in, because this will not fit past the frame otherwise. Get everything, trying to get it lined up here without hitting the, and I hit it. I can feel on the inside I hit the puller arm. So if I do that, I've got to pull that back out. Try this again. Alright, That's that. Let that rest. See if I can't get this lined up without hitting that arm in, which is what I'm trying to avoid this whole time, and I'm still hitting it. I can feel it go in. Pull that back out. Try this again. This does take some finesse and some wiggling about. Make sure you get it lined up just so. But once it goes, you're going to feel it. It'll line up really nicely with the gasket and the dowels, the locating pins. And then it should be easy peasy from there, just screwing it back together and torquing your clutch cover bolts on and reattaching your clutch cable. Let that rest out as far as I can, just let that go against the frame. That felt pretty good because everything's lined up. Now, at this point, I may not have actually got this where I want it. I'm going to test. Gasket looks good. On the outside, everything's lined up. I can feel a little bit of the gasket in some places, which is good. To see where this catches. Perfect. Catches right there, which is where I want it. The catch for this lever, you can feel it catch, should basically be at pointing directly at the bike. So it shouldn't be way catching out here or back here, basically 90 degrees or perpendicular. 90 degrees probably doesn't help. Straight on with the clutch. You want it to catch right there. Alright, now that I've got that, I just have to put some bolts in to hold this in place, get everything torqued back down, put oil back in the bike,